our third salon on this series for the year on social destination. And we started the year with a talk about the retail destination, and then this summer we had a great talk about the cultural destination with our partners and clients from the Tycoon, the police station. And we thought it was fitting to finish with hospitality, that series this year. And because looking at the change that happened, in the last decade, I will say, with technology and cultural, revolution with us, with this generation of what I call the M generation, me, myself, millennial. So, in a way, hospitality has been impacted maybe earlier than retail, and had the chance in the last 10 years to adapt, I think, to some changes that retail is only starting to, has been struggling with, and we've seen some collapse of giants, Macy's, and not collapse, but it's been dented, I would say. So the models of retail have been really impacted, but hotel had the chance, I think, to adapt maybe in a more nimble way to those changes. So I think that's what we'll talk about today, and what's coming next for the next decade, basically. Also, we started working on hotels 8 years ago, I think, with the launch of Opposite House. It's 8 years, right? Yeah. So we work on the Opposite House, which was also a response to the change that was coming, and that had a big impact. And we followed by the East Hotel, of course. And now here we are, with different projects. I think that we will talk about today. So that's. I'll start by introducing our superb panel. Three gentlemen that we had the chance to work with on projects, and I'll start with Simon Westcott, who's the owner and CEO of LUXE City Guides. So I wanted him. It's your second time as a speaker, probably. Yeah. And I wanted him to be here to bring his bird eye view of the industry and of course his experience and insight. And next we have Aron Harilela, who's he's chairman and CEO of the Harilela Group of Hotel, and which we developed together. It's Aron's brand, the Harry, for the Harilela Group, and it's the first brand that is owned by the group, basically their own brand. Sorry. And then we have Leo Moon, and we work together on the Rise Hotel in Seoul as part of the Autograph collection with Marriott, and opening in April, May. Yeah. Yes, next year. Somewhere around there. Right. So that's our panel, and maybe I want to ask Simon to maybe to start off. We work together on that's our panel. Simon, we worked together on the LUXE City Guides when you took over the helm of a company, and that was 3 years ago. Yeah, 3 years ago. So I think it's good to start with you. What's kind of a work we've done with you, just repositioning, and we did that cute little gift together on Hong Kong and Beijing. But today, obviously, you move a company forward, and maybe it's we want to hear from you. What's going on basically in your industry.
Well, and maybe to share a couple of thoughts about the hotel piece from my perspective. So just a huge thank you, first of all, and also just a great honour to be sitting alongside people who are actually doing the hard work over many years with millions and millions, if not billions of dollars. So I feel a bit of a fraud. But I think in terms of the framework that you set, what's interesting to me, you've this hotel of tomorrow idea, fighting sameness. I think it's always, Lux is very interested in the things that are new, unique, cutting edge, high design, all of those things. But also, you know, we do hold on to perennial qualities of, you know, good service, you know, sort of, in a sense, you know, market leading kind of luxury. And I think the question often in these kinds of forums is, you know, where does innovation and experimentation add genuine value, and where do we need to actually not run away from things that shouldn't change? And, you know, especially if you think about when we all go to hotels, yes, we can be stimulated by the new, and we can be frustrated if, you know, we can't take our digital world with us, for instance. But by the same token, if someone doesn't bring what we ask for at the end of a phone, it's frustrating. So yes, we need to fight sameness, but we also need to sort of work out what's perennial as well. I think Lux is in a small way in a unique position, because we do look at the best of sort of global delivery of all kinds of experiences, not just hotels, but obviously restaurants, bars, activities, which is a key area in the experience economy, which I know we'll talk about. And our model, if you like, our sort of secret sauce is the particular type of people that we have working with us in destinations. So we have we cover 30 cities around the world now, all in print and in digital. We have 30 resident editors. They're traditionally not travel writers. They're people sort of living the Lux life on their own dollar. And, you know, they're out all the time. They have that sort of passion that we all have to share unique experiences with people. We pay them something, of course, but effectively it's not their day job. It's, you know, their passion. They might be, I mean, our LA resident editor is a floral designer, whatever that is. And, you know, we have architects and actors and all kinds of different people. And they're also not sort of, you know, tokenistic tastemakers. You know, you see quite a lot of content in the social space now with influencers, you know, sort of writing to effectively, you know, a one-off, you know, or a celebrity one-off list. These are people who are out every week, constantly giving us recommendations. So the reputation we built and the business built over its 13, 14-year history for curation. The simple transformation we've made in the last 3 years is to make that about constant curation. So those resident editors are now not on project fees, they're on retainers. We're talking to them all the time. They're working on digital platforms. They're validating stuff, and it can flow through to the app, you know, pretty seamlessly.
In the space of 3 years, you basically, because it was purely a print
you build
a platform.
There was an app before. It was a very static app, and it was developed with CSL. Mm-hmm. So you can imagine what that was like. But yeah, it's a very different kind of experience. We also relaunched all of the print guides this year, and now whenever you buy a print guide for Lux, you get a code for their digital app. So you get the best of bundling. And this, if you look at media trends, you know, it's not just the flight from print to digital. It's about how you bundle on different platforms. So look, we do believe, you know, social media, social content, peer-to-peer content, all of those things are very important. There is that functionality now in Lux, but we do obviously still believe, especially at the top end, in curated content and the need for a filter. And the more, you know, I mean, TripAdvisor is now its own worst enemy. The more peer content there is, the more profusion of content, the more you need trusted filters. And, you know, it's been a successful, you know, we've sold 3 times as many print guides this year as last year off the relaunch and bundling digital. So it's interesting. And we actually increased our price by 40-50%. So with absolutely no impact on sales. So the sort of, you know, the capacity to drive premium content at a price.
It's reassuring to know that there's room for expansion. Quality curated.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, and when I think about sort of, you know, in the hotel space, you know, we obviously work for some hotel brands globally, and I think hotels are doing a fantastic job of originating content and having a content platform for recommendations, but actually the hard work of making sure that is constantly curated. You know, I can remember, you know, the Ferndale Hotels in London, which I love, you know, Kit Kemp's favourite 6 restaurants, you know, well, that's fine until one closes or the other one moves, or, you know, the actual, that's our knitting. You know, you guys are brilliant hospitality people, but our knitting is kind of curating content on an ongoing basis. But I suppose the three things that I'm interested in talking about today, and the sort of trends I see emerging from that bird's eye view, as you said, one is about locality, and that's about neighbourhood, and it's about local community. The other is the experience economy, which is no news, but I think that's the definition of that is getting clearer. And then the other is, you know, people talk about technology, but I don't think it's about technology. I think it's about ease. I think it's about the frictionless experience you have of moving around the world, and how hotels are adapting to that. So, you know, in the context of locality, it is really interesting that you know, hoteliers are pushing into more residential neighbourhoods, and neighbourhoods which are sort of off the beaten track a little bit more. And you know, I think, as I understand it, I'm not a great expert in Seoul, but you know, I think what you're doing in Hongdae, is that right? Yeah, is really, really interesting. You know, sort of university precinct, creative precinct. So that sense of being in something less touristed and much more residential and local. You know, I was just looking through our Hong Kong app today, and I'd clocked the little. I don't know, has anyone been to Little Tai Hang, the restaurant, the hotel in Tai Hang? You rate it? Did you rate it? It's just a little boutique in Tai Hang.
I heard it's amazing.
You know, it's in a, and also Tuve. You know, so I mean, which is Tin Hao. So you know, yeah, you know. We have a content format on the LUXE site called Repeat Offenders Guides to. I've just written one for Tokyo. You know, that's the Repeat Offenders Guide to Hong Kong. If you've been to Hong Kong lots of times, going to Tin Hao or Tai Hang is going to be interesting. So that sort of, you know, all of that spread east in London, etc., etc.
Yeah, I was about to say Shoreditch is a bit.
Sorry,
the Shoreditch story is a bit. In
yeah,
that vein,
Shoreditch and you know, even I mean Lo Lik Peng opening in Bethnal Green. You know, I used to live in Bethnal Green, and it ain't glamorous, and it still ain't glamorous, but it's very interesting to be there. But you know, again, on the sort of preserving essentials piece, you know, I do some of my favourite hotels are in places like Belgravia or Mayfair or Marylebone, where you know I probably wouldn't be able to afford to live, but I love that sense of going and having that sort of aspirational access. I think, you know, that's, and you still want something of that from a hotel, the sort of glamour of being somewhere truly, you know, special, I suppose. I mean, on the local community side, you know, again, it's fairly obvious. I'm sure these things will come up, but the F&B offer is revolutionising the way that the hoteliers are working in partnerships with not just celebrity chefs, but really good, solid F&B operators. You know, the sort of destination restaurant or bar in a hotel like Nam at the Metropolitan, which in some ways is, you know, in much better shape than the hotel. You know, Artesian at the Langham being the world's best bar. You know, I wouldn't consider the Langham particularly from a personal snobby point of view, but you know, the Artesian will get me there. You know, and there are also some salutary lessons, I think, from people like I haven't experienced it personally, but I've only heard bad things about the standard Highline. They have the rooftop bar, and you know, I think hotel guests are second-class citizen when it comes to, you know, the exclusive event, and literally like closing lifts to hotel guests so that the VIPs can go to the top.
Do you want to maybe we ask Aron maybe to jump in, and I just want to talk a little bit about the the Harry Hotel, because I think it links with what you just talked about. It's the idea so for Aron, you know, to create your own brand. Maybe if you can, as an owner, if you can talk a little bit about how did the idea came about. You launched in London first, but that was not the original plan necessarily. But
no. So we've been in hotels for 40 years, and our model has always been we build, develop, or buy, and have third-party managing companies manage it for us. Holiday Inn, Intercontinental, Sheraton, Westin, etc., W, etc., etc. And I started to get actually really annoyed at these guys who got into the industry, didn't know anything, came into a city and said, "Oh, yeah, by the way, you should do this, this, and this, and this." I said, "I've known this hotel for 40 years. You guys have known it for 2. What are you telling me what to do?" Right? So I got particularly pissed off with these guys. And at one point we had 19 hotels, and I said, "Why am I listening to these guys tell me that, you know what, we should cut out all the travel agents who give us our base business in a difficult destination? Why I should take sausages off my German restaurant menu and put shrimp?" And I said, "You know, I get out of here." So with 19 hotels, I thought to myself, it's time for us to start our own brand, which is this property here in London. Actually, it was my first deal. I bought it in 1997 and ran it as a Sheraton for the best of 15 odd, Sheraton Belgravia, exactly, for 12, 13 years, 12 years.
Very big it was. And then you moved to another brand, right?
So then we moved to another brand, and actually I was contemplating at that time, that's 2009, contemplating running it ourselves. But for one reason or another, we went against that, and I gutted it internally and redeveloped the whole internal space, creating more revenue. Actually, strangely enough, decreasing the rooms from 89 to 85, which is a mortal sin in my industry. It says more rooms means more revenue, but a lot of the back of house spaces I created into front of house spaces, and so hopefully, we're 26% up year on year after working with you guys, so that's great news.
That's value.
That's great news.
Into branding, 26%. Yeah.
So we had another brand in there, but then we rebranded to the Harry end of August last year.
Yes.
2016, and we're, as I said, 26% up in room revenue, which is quite spectacular.
It's quite spectacular. Maybe I know that if we can talk a little bit about the process, because I know it was the first time for you to work on a branding process. So I remember that I think after our first 2 meetings, you were like, "This is quite interesting." It's fun, right? So we went for a lot, the name, for example. We went.
Well, I remember when we first sat down together, you said, "What is your inspiration for the Harry?" And in English anecdote, trying to explain it to French people, it's very difficult. My wife is French, and the French don't have a sense of humor, right? So, am I allowed to say anything bad about the French? So I tried to explain to them. They said, "Okay, what is the inspiration for the Harry?" And I said, 2 things. You've got to understand how British people are just juxtaposed. You have that caricature situation of the parliamentarian with a bowler hat and a pinstripe suit getting knocked down by a bus. He dies. He goes to the mortuary. They take off his clothes, and he's wearing fishnet stockings. Or the tattooed guy with heroin marks who walks into your restaurant and he's upset that there's no white tablecloths because he's some lord from somewhere. Just trying to explain this juxtaposition is very, very British.
It's Monty Python. You describe
it's Monty Python, and actually, for us to be a London neighbourhood restaurant, we really need to tap into the vibe of Belgravia. We can't take Shoreditch and put it in Belgravia. We can't take Hong Kong and put it in Belgravia. And we came up with these 4 catchphrases: layered, elegant, cultured, singular. This is the basis of what we would like. And it's, at the end of the day, it's an extension of how I like to live. If I'm going to create my own brand, I want to do one that I want to go and stay in.
I think it was very interesting for us because we deal a lot with with corporate brands and building brands for various big clients and always trying to find a theme and angle. But with you, I think very quickly, I think we recognize after 2 meetings, we said, "You are the brand, basically, Aron." So we're gonna build that brand around like a persona. In a way, for us, I think that was the first time we had that experience. It was very, very interesting in that sense. But it relates to London and the neighborhood in that with that first hotel, but also to your heritage also, where you're coming from, and the family and Hong Kong, India, and so it was all mixed up in a way, right?
But what I find interesting about that is that it makes it presumably much more authentic because it is personal.
Yeah.
And I think one of the traps that sometimes the big corporate hoteliers can fall into, with all due respect to design agencies, is that
Don't do that.
it's no exactly no. I think you guys really. I mean, I'm not blowing smoke, but I think you genuinely do strip it back. But I think we probably all said in places where the design concept of the multinational boutique is so overthought and so inauthentic. Right. I think I'm just thinking of the I will name names, but the Indigo in Shanghai. I don't know if you've stayed there. It's a great position, looks down the Bund, but I remember.
We have some,
yeah. No, I mean I know that's good. I mean this is we're opinionated. We're opinionated. I said that I know the guy that was in charge of the branding there, and I sort of I gave him that feedback. My room had a goldfish, which was to do with some lucky symbol. It had a brick wall because of the Shanghai brick.
Yeah.
It had the carpet had an old map of Shanghai in a stencil. Yes. But it just looked like a whole lot of lines on a carpet, and it was just there were so many stories, and I think that's what's heartening. If you hear you say it's effectively an authentic personal story. That's a much more powerful experience than.
So I think we can talk about that. Yeah, expand on this later. But how do we create authenticity? I mean, that's kind of a point here. How do we stay authentic and true? With multiplying those experiences. Yeah. So, I think you talked a little bit. We talked a little bit about the process, and I think London was our template in a way, but always knowing that we will have to move to Hong Kong, which Hong Kong is
2.5 years out.
2.5 years out.
Yeah.
Huh? Yeah, in Wan Chai. So,
Which
a
building?
very interesting location, right? You can talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So the home is Hong Kong. We opened our first hotel here in 1975. And then we have small pockets of shareholding in different hotels, but we've never actually opened another full one, 100%. And I really wanted to do it. So Fanny and I went out looking for buildings, sort of traipsing streets, looking at what was demolished. No, we found a building. 2 buildings actually on Lockhart Road. Very interesting.
Yeah.
And it's my board of directors said to me, "What are you doing in Lockhart Road?" I said, "Wait a second. It's 5 and 10 minutes. It's 10 minutes walk from the convention center. That area is changing. So it's in the middle between Wan Chai and Causeway Bay. So it's not the fun part of Wan Chai where you see all the red light bars. It's actually the boring side where you see the sanitary ware shops. All right. So, but right now there's a new hotel there called the Fleming.
Yes.
Great idea that the government had actually, Carrie and her team, to expand the convention exhibition center. So I'm extremely happy we're going there. We're looking for a transformation. That is what we're going to build. And that would be an extension of the DNA of the Harry in London, with all those 4 concepts being Hong Kongized. Yeah.
But I think what we talked about when we were building the brand is, because we knew that we will have more locations to come, and I think the idea was every hotel in every location would be basically the Hong Kong of Aron, the London of Aron, and so it's a way to make it more from an editorial point of view in a sense, for each location. So we give not everything, just a very narrow point of view, basically.
I mean, actually, to take Simon's point, rather than let's imagine that I open eventually a Harry in Bangkok. We're not going to have elephants in the rooms, right? But the restaurants that I like to go to, the concierge is going to say, "Oh, by the way, he likes to do this," or the parts that I like to do in Bangkok will incorporate in there. And so, I hear you about the generic authenticity.
Yeah. Or just the overthinking the story.
Yeah.
The story needs to be more natural.
Yeah, I think we'll get back to that maybe later. It's how we work on those things for the staff training and the internal culture. But I want to move on quickly to, I think we get back to Seoul. So with Leo, it's been five years now. That we 4 years we
The
started.
project itself, I've worked on it for now 6 years. But
Yeah,
now
we
about
came
open.
in with Marriott an autograph collection 5 years ago. Yeah, and it's again, I think Leo is owner of several hotels, including a Hyatt Regency in Jeju Island. But for you, it's your first own brand, basically, within the autograph collection with Marriott. But what was your idea, basically?
Well,
and you had this unique property and this unique neighborhood.
Yes.
That we should talk about.
So, as much as I'm honored to sit here as if I'm a warrior about to set out there and change the hotel industry, the idea didn't start from challenging the hotel industry or the branding world. The story begins with a boy who grew up with his family business owned hotel. So Aju is a company that was founded by my grandfather in 1960. We started from manufacturing, and we owned this hotel called Hotel Seogyo in northwest part of Seoul, an area called Hongdae, since the late 80s. And we owned and operated the hotel under the name Hotel Seogyo for a long time. It was a traditional, very nice hotel. It started off as a very nice hotel with 5 restaurants, the biggest and landmark property in the neighborhood for a long time. And over time, the neighborhood of Hongdae, I'm not sure if any of you here have been to Hongdae part of Seoul, has become young and vibrant. Like,
how would you describe it? It's like a Shoreditch or Brooklyn,
exactly. Shoreditch,
because
Brooklyn,
the university is very famous for art.
Yeah,
design.
fine arts. It's the best fine arts university called Hongik University, and Hongdae is not actual official title of the neighborhood, but everybody calls it as Hongdae, which is abbreviation for Hongik University. So, because of the fine arts university, they were housing a lot of artists who are doing their own version of cafe, live music and everything. So all these unique forces started to form around the neighborhood.
So what I have to say is that, we describe it as this neighborhood as the epicenter of the Korean pop culture that is so dominant in Asia, now globally, around the world. It started here, basically. The publishing house, the record label, the video company, the movie company, everything is around this neighborhood. So it's extremely rich in contemporary popular culture.
It wasn't always like that. So, when I grew up, I just knew the neighborhood as, where our hotel was. And as time went by, the neighborhood became more young and vibrant, artsy, and the hotel was more or less a conventional, old school hotel. And it was getting older as well. So as the performance went down, we got rid of some of the restaurants, and I used to go there and hang out. It was known for a lot of clubs and bars, live music. I was always into live music. So when I used to go back there in college, I used to hide. That's our hotel, because it was people were saying, younger people were saying, oh, that's kind of old-fashioned, like, oh, why is it, it's so dead, And literally, we could see that we were becoming, in this block that was really activated retail-wise, we were becoming an island. The streets were filled with only the old school stuff, only the street where our hotel is, except for the rest of the block, which was really young and vibrant. So my hope was, looking at our hotel that I grew up with, getting older and getting less popular, I wanted to connect it back to the neighborhood.
So you turned it completely around. I remember our first meeting. It's really, from Leo and his team, was really, we want to do an hotel that is a symbol of the creative force of Hongdae district, basically. Almost a homage and also an actor, in a way. I think that's very important, that part is. So we really build the brand as not a hotel brand, but as a lifestyle brand, in a way. That could be the reception for anything, right? Yeah. And to the point where, when we looked at the architecture at very early stage, before the architecture wasn't completely fixed and there was no interior design, but we really worked on, make it the ground floor completely open, a public space. This long wall will be dedicated to a graffiti mural that could be changed every year. And this part that goes up to 14th floor, there's 3 floor of retail, but that is basically curated by you as the hotel. So maybe you want to expand on that hybridization of retail, culture, hospitality, basically. Which
I mean, the idea is nothing new. I mean, I was born. I wasn't born in Seoul, actually. I was born in London, but I was raised in Seoul. I grew up in Seoul, but I went to college in the U.S. I went to do my master's in Europe. So I traveled around the world and I saw different inspirations. And one of the things that I saw that was changing the hotel industry was we used to think of hotels as an exclusive space for the guests. So it wasn't very inviting to people who are walking by. Unless you're a guest, will I be welcomed into the space? But the concept was changing. A lot of the hotels are now starting to, go towards the concept of inclusivity. More work with the local, neighborhood and local residents to enjoy the space, and people who stay at the hotel enjoy it more because they can observe, what locals are doing. So, the idea started from observing our neighborhood where there's so much energy and so much pedestrians walking by every day. I thought it was foolish not to take advantage of what is already existing in the neighborhood. We didn't have to create something as Rise or as our hotel. We could simply create a platform to give, connect us back to the neighborhood with all that energy that is flowing around.
So, and I think what you're doing in very concrete terms with the culture, that the hotel becoming producing culture. I mean, you invest into. You hired a cultural director, Jason, who used to work with us as well. You hire a cultural director before hiring a general manager.
Yes.
That's unique in a. That's quite visionary.
Yeah, I mean, I saw that. I have a lot of friends in big brands, and I'm sure there are some of them here as well. But I saw that many of the new brand launch start from consulting projects. Get the concept, branding, and then find the location and find the right team. But as time goes by, teams move on, and you have to keep the operation going. So that essence and concept starts to fade away with people who are coming from more standardized, manualized hotels, and I could definitely see that to activate a lifestyle hotel, for it to really come into a life, a reality, it cannot be just a sheer concept. So we need someone who understands the concept to represent the brand and live the brand on site and constantly create activities outside the hotel, because we hoteliers oftentimes get so fixated in daily operations. We start to forget what happens outside because running the daily operation is so intense. So that's what I envision for the role for the cultural team and our cultural director, the title is now brand director, but Jason was actually the project manager who was part of Marc and Chantal, started the project with us. And who else would better understand the culture and our ethos better than him? And he was leaving the company for personal reasons, and I asked him, why don't we see this baby that we made together come to life?
Can I ask? I mean, either Aron or Leo. I mean, what are the benchmark properties that get that dialogue between the local community and a cultural? I think it's very interesting that he started off as a cultural director and now has become a brand director, because in a way, maybe it's acknowledging that it is about marketing and it's about an experience. But you know, I'm just sort of really struggling. If I think about the hotels that deliver that, it's often in the sort of private club context. So like Soho House, you know, film nights, special events, speakers. But that's really about the community of people within their ecosystem, which is pulling some locals in. But I'm struggling to think of hotels that have actually delivered.
Well, Soho House, you know.
Sorry?
The Soho House, in a way.
Yeah, that's what I mean, but that's a private club.
Yeah, well,
so,
yeah.
But it's talking to its own community.
Yeah.
Whereas what you're talking about is slightly different because it's about getting.
Well,
I think the Hoxton is doing that.
The Hoxton. Actually, maybe the group in the Ace. Yeah, Ace in the US.
Yeah,
I think that's right.
Yeah, Ace is a bit like that, you know.
Downtown
in a
LA,
sense that
Ace
is very
good.
focused on one community, and then
Yeah.
you know. I mean, I walked.
Creating content.
Yeah, I remember going to the Ace Hotel in Shoreditch a couple of years ago, London, and we were staying in another one, not Rosewood, but
Number shelter. I think number.
Yeah.
I think even the Mandarin, the Mandarin does it very well at a different level.
Right.
In a way, you know, I know what you mean. Yeah, it's sort of talking to a community, a
Absolutely.
local community. Yeah.
But the best thing about Ace
Well,
Hotel,
Because
because walking in the
production
Ace
of it,
Hotel,
yeah.
honestly, in London, and you walk in that lobby and you look around and you say, "Oh my God, what am I doing here?" There's just kids there, so you feel a bit self-conscious, right? But what was interesting is just talking with the staff and say, you know, where should, you know, as you say, where should we go for a meal? And this, you know, say, oh, there's this Vietnamese street next door, and you go to that noodle shop, and so you get that connection from those guys into a.
It was
they will open doors for you that you might not have opened otherwise. So then the hotel becomes a cultural
and we have to
engine for you.
and we have to stay true to what our DNA is. You know, we're not just, you know, looking for brands that are most hot or most popular. We are more or less a brand that were inspired by street energy, right? So, you know, does it make sense for us to collaborate with, let's say, Hermes just because it's the best, most luxurious brand?
Yeah.
Maybe not, right?
So the three retail store levels in Rising will be curated in partnership with that great what's the name again? Works Out. Works Out. Yeah. And also, I think there will be a buffer space where, in the retail, we will have Rise product, basically, like we started to design some of those things. So it's really much a brand that can fit into a retail concept, a lifestyle concept at the same time.
My brand director, even though I'm the ownership, my brand director gave me a clear instruction. He doesn't want me to give away too much who's coming in. But yes, Works Out is one of the street fashion, skateboard fashion brand, a select fashion shop in Korea. They're successful guys. And they were the business who started from Hongdae as well. So we like to invite them. We like the idea of inviting them into our space. And the basement space, I'm not sure if you were updated. We are now working at one of the large but most daring and bold gallery of Korea. They're going to be taking out our basement space. We have invited a San Francisco-based artisanal bakery into our ground floor space for people to enjoy bread and coffee. We've invited a Thai-based restaurant group to run our restaurant. We invited the top mixology guys from Korea to do our rooftop bar. The idea is, Korean locals would like something that is more international. And international people who are staying in the room want to see more local. So we wanted to create a good balance of retail space, lower ground retail space that is enjoyed by the locals. And the people who stay at the hotel will enjoy observing that energy of the local people, as well as millions of restaurants outside our hotel, which are Korean restaurants.
So now you're in the process of recruitment. I think you have all the director level sorted.
Yeah.
So, but talk, and I think for Aron also, I mean, when we work on the Harry, if I go back to the Harry, And we work on that little thing, which was a little thing we think, oh, let's do a little introduction of a brand that the staff can carry in their pocket. And it became something quite important, actually, because it helps you convey that new brand to the people who will be carried, as an experience for the guest. And also it became, because we wrote the whole thing, and it became also a template for your training program, right?
So yes, I mean the staff book is in a traditional hotel you'd have a staff handbook that looks like this. That tells you what kind of tie, how your tie should be tied, etc., etc. We don't have that at all. Actually, our staff book, you can put it in the pocket, as you rightly said, and it has probably a third of it of blank pages.
Yes, for them to write.
For them to write. You know what? I think this about the brand. I walked around the corner and I saw a little noodle shop. I mean, not in London, but the little sushi place
in Belgravia.
In Belgravia. So we encourage the staff actually to write what they think the brand is, so the brand can actually grow with the input of the protagonists, the people who are actually in there working day by day, seeing all the customers, living the brand. So the brand DNA will grow with them. We always encourage our concierges to say, by the way, if there's somebody new in London and they say, well, what restaurants should we go? He should take out the LUXE guide for sure, but any other guides, he said, if you don't go to Zagat and go, here it is. He says, well, there's this place around the corner. It's a Vietnamese noodle shop, for example. Yeah. It's not glamorous. It's not wonderful. It's not expensive. But I tell you, the pho is amazing, right? So that kind of stuff, which means they start writing things down. We encourage them to walk around the area. What they see, they put it down themselves. So it's not the regular guide. And that's just proved absolutely invaluable. Yeah. And what when you walk into the hotel in London, we have an interior designer who's very, very good, and she creates a lot of luxury. And then you walk behind to the reception desk, and Tara Bernard. Yeah. And when you walk
doing the one in Hong Kong as well.
She's doing the one in Hong Kong. And everybody behind the reception desk, you expect, you walk into Belgravia, you expect everybody to be tie and suits and bow ties and what have you. All the girls have got tattoos. And he said to me, hey, can we do them? Absolutely, we can do this. It's not only embracing the neighborhood, the people, it's also embracing what's happening in the world right now.
And we also went on to help you with the Pampero, the Italian hotel, just doing the branding. That really changed the vibe in the hotel, right? It kind of destination in the neighborhood.
So we created an Italian restaurant in a restaurant space that wasn't working very well. And two separate stories. When we tried to name the hotel, we went through a very structured process, and we came out with 4 different categories. One was geographical, one was, I don't remember the exact categorization, but feeling, ambience, blah, blah, and under each of these we had 20 names, and we shortlisted. Then we went out to 7-8 offices of Marc and Chantal, and 80% of the respondents came back and said, the Harry. So I said, perfect, you know what, my father's name is Harry. And
what's your idea?
No, I actually kept quite quiet on this one, actually, because I knew which one I would like.
Aron was very smart, because we kept showing all those names, right? I mean, we had tons of names. And then very quickly, as, I was thinking, but, the Harry is probably, it makes our job easy, but look easy. So we have to go through all that process. And at the end, I had to say, but because he wouldn't say it, so I said,
I knew which one I would like, right?
So I said, maybe the Harry is the name.
Particularly subjective about that.
Yeah, of course. But I think we all, after a process, and the process with Rise was also, I don't know how much time we spent.
My ideas were all vetoed by my.
But naming is an extraordinary thing, because we put so much process and thought into it, but at the end of the day, it's pure intuition, really. Yes. And it's 2 very interesting cases where we kind of knew that the Harry was probably right, and we waited, and then it was demonstrated that he was the right thing, and then it was legitimate. And
Then-
easy for Aron to say yes. Okay.
You know what? It's not me.
Yeah.
It was a
Yes,
lot of other
a
people.
collective decision.
Whereas Il Pampero,
Yes.
the name of the Italian restaurant, is completely different. We
It's
went through the
yours.
same process.
That's really you.
Went through the same process,
Yeah.
and I just didn't like any of the names. And so I'm sitting next to my crazy interior designer one day who lives across the river from me in London. And I called her up. It's a nice summer's evening. And I say, Tara, I need to talk to you about a couple of things. Darling, it's Friday. Come over to my house. Okay, opens a bottle of rosé, and I say, and we're drinking it and drinking it. And I said, Tara, I just can't get the name of this damn ass restaurant. And I'm passionate about my polo, so I play a lot of polo, which is actually where I'm flying to tonight to have a weekend of polo. And she goes, darling, what's the name of your favorite horse? I'm like, Pampero. There you are. Right? I'm like, it's an Argentinian name. No, bugger it, we do it. So we Italianized it a bit.
Great.
So we put Il Pampero.
We went for a few rounds and we had to ask our Italian-speaking friends, and is that legitimate? I said probably not, but you know,
As in Pampas.
As in Pampas.
Pampas, yeah,
That's,
yeah.
that's the name of my
exactly.
favorite horse. My oldest
A
friend
horse
is,
of the Pampas.
But it's a good
exactly.
story.
Yeah.
So
hilarious.
Il Pampero doesn't mean anything.
No, my
Yeah.
best friend is Italian, and he
Yeah.
really kicked me out.
Yeah. Right. So yeah, maybe you want to open up. I think it's time to open up to some maybe a bit about next step in the industry and where we're going. Maybe Simon, you want to jump on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things we haven't talked about is the sort of Airbnb effect, and it's sort of interesting that Airbnb have also
And we put our friends
kind of put so much energy into the experiences piece. Has anyone in this room actually experienced an Airbnb experience?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's
Raise
already-
your hand.
And who had a good
Airbnb.
who had a good experience? Who had a bad experience?
Stephen.
Okay, so it's not bad really, actually.
I know, thank you. Thank you for fucking us.
Yeah.
This is Oasis, by the way. It's been invested into by Hyatt this year. Last year. It's and it's like it's very interesting because it's like an Airbnb model,
Yeah.
except it's highly curated, very curated, and it comes with service. So it's basically service like a hotel
Yeah.
room. In so it cannot be anywhere in the world. It needs a support system, and it's pretty amazing but it raises questions like, then why would you stay in hotel? I mean, there's always going to be hotels, but what is the next form of hotel? Basically, what function will you perform if you can stay in that kind of place as well?
I mean, I think also the truth of the matter is it's never one size fits all anyway. I mean, all of us, we stay in different hotels with very different, depending on different needs. If you've got a slightly more business focused trip, you'd stay somewhere closer to where you needed to work. You might you might be going away with your partner. You might want a quiet, inside a residential experience. Other times you might want the flashy experience of staying in the, downtown LA and, hanging with the hipsters at A. So I don't think it's just more choice. It's just more consumer choice. But I do think the idea of the fully serviced Airbnb or the fully serviced apartment rental that will definitely become more and more pervasive. And also we were talking earlier about the infrastructure helping people. So these guys are hoteliers who talk to people who will help them, create brands and sell hotel product. There's a whole industry springing up around people to maximize Airbnb listings and to manage, owned properties and to, create enhance the experience in a owned.
And the way you manage your hotel, of course, is because I always says, if I have any kind of hotel, I order room service, it's 10 p.m. whatever, and you order and say yes, sir, it will be there in 45 minutes. But then today I call Deliveroo wherever I am and say, I order a fantastic Indian meal, whatever, and they will say, yes, it will be with you in 45 minutes. Otherwise, it's free for you. So and I think with Hyatt Centric in New York is, with Grubhub, where you can order from your Hyatt hotel, and I'm sure it's all connected. You can, through those type of service, you can service your hotel.
Yeah, and I've talked a bit before. I do think also this idea of this digital ecosystem that we take with us when we travel, that will become more and more pervasive. So, yes, actually I'm less interested in being a Hyatt member in every city than I am being able to use Uber in every city, or being able to connect to my Spotify account in every hotel room, or whatever else it might be. I was just in Jaipur for a wedding last week, and I hadn't realised how ubiquitous Uber was.
There's Uber in Jaipur?
Well, in India, it just seems to be the pervasive, in the main cities now, it's the pervasive...
Uber elephants.
No, it was as cheap as a tuk-tuk and reliable,
Right.
And it was just easy.
So that's interesting what you're saying about your internet bubble, your digital bubble, because we're really working on those kind of things for other projects, mixed project, retail and lifestyle and culture, but the fact that you carry your bubble and then the hotel or whoever is the provider has to kind of plug into you.
Yeah, well, it's making that, and that's what I was talking about, ease. That needs to be frictionless. And airlines are doing it now. Why? You just take your own media and you just watch your own stuff. You don't necessarily need all these expensive in-room movie options.
Yeah.
It's just let me plug in Netflix and broadcast it easily.
Right. So we talked about that. This is interesting because that goes with Accor Group, and they basically the idea that you have to the hotel has to perform for the neighborhood as well, and with this, what Accor is trying to do is the neighborhood, whoever lives around the hotel, can use the hotel as a support base, right? So you can have you mail deliver there. You can use the flower shop. I got
Yeah, you can use it as almost like a post office. You can have your delivery being delivered in the hotel if you're not home during the day. You can pick up your bread after work hours in the hotel. It's pretty.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I thought it was very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, just looking on the link that you sent, I hadn't come across that. That's in France only at the moment, right?
I think they plan to run
they're expanding
worldwide.
but I think they're testing it in France. Yeah,
but it's a big move.
Yeah.
In a way, right? And Leo, in a sense, you want to be part of a neighborhood. You want the neighborhood to the hotel to act on behalf and support the neighborhood. It's more in a cultural way, but this is a very practical way that's quite interesting, isn't it?
I've been always a big advocate of the whole Airbnb and shared economy movement. In fact, I invested in a co-working space in Korea as well, aside from our hotel project. And a year ago, we opened one hoping to be friends with all these startup people, and already we're on to third location now. We just opened the third location for the co-working space. So I think definitely this is a wave, and I think hotel industry people, we have to look at it as a voice coming from the customers. They want something different, and what I mean by that is we used to provide something that were big corporations. We think like big corporations and try to give them a set product that is you take it or leave it kind of a way. But now the reason for uprising of shared economy, I see it more as a kind of a democratic movement. People want to buy things they want at the time they want, at the place they want, and the way they want. So I think we have to respond to that, and all these movements, I see it as a positive changes in the hotel industry.
Do you think there'll be a moment where co-working and sort of hotels will come together?
I think that is a very natural idea, because oftentimes we see, those small meeting rooms in all these hotels, oftentimes they sit empty. What if we can connect all those space with the co-working space people? The members can use it at a rate, pre-arranged rates.
And people are already working in hotel lobbies now.
Yeah.
You go to London, all these hotel lobbies, they're packed with people with
and that's again
laptop.
Off the street, as it were. Mind you, it looked like you sent a link round about Joe and Joe, which was that it looked like hell on earth to me.
No. Which one? Sorry.
That was it was Joe and Joe. That was another Acor initiative, wasn't it? And that was there were sort of bunk beds and yurts and hammocks and it was co-working, co-living on the road, and it just seemed like, horribly overloaded with sort of trend.
Co-working is already getting merged with F&B and with hotels.
But I think the new models are really like what you described there was like the co-working space within the building is something that is shared by the hotel, the neighborhood, maybe the office component. So the hotel becomes decentralized in a way, and all those resources. But even restaurant, when you ask somebody else to come and operate, which was completely against the norm, not that long ago. Yeah. That's a way to make the hotel not virtual in a sense, but if you add this element to it, you can imagine a hotel that basically is spreading out around the city and the neighborhood. It's not just physical, in a sense, right? Is that something for the next rise in New York, London, or wherever we take it? You're thinking about, it needs to be under one roof in a sense, but.
Yeah, the way I see it is, even if Airbnb gets bigger, I haven't looked at the data, but I feel that the hospitality industry still grew while Airbnb grew. So I think as much as the hoteliers are feel threatened, the overall pie has grown, and I think Airbnb has helped by diversifying the way people can travel. And the rise of low-cost carriers also helped with that as well. So many options to travel, and then so many options to, stay in.
People can,
and
move from one option to another as they be moving high or simply
so
different.
I don't feel that Airbnb would be the end result of everything that will eat away everything. I believe. Airbnb need physical apartments, OTAs need physical hotels in order for them to sell the rooms, right? So the physical properties won't go away. So I don't look at it as way for rise to expand. What we more focus on right now in order to be able to expand ourselves into different countries is we talk within our team as creating fandom. We want to create fans of Rise and want to be invited into different cities.
Exactly. And then when you visit one in Seoul, you dream that there'll be one also in LA or somewhere like that. That's what Ace, I think.
And the fandom is, I think, that's what's about differentiation. In order for properties to thrive within this dynamic, changing world, I think you have to differentiate yourself.
A sense of culture, basically. Is that how you see Harry also, or you approach it from a... Because I remember also we say let's not do an hotel for millennials. I think that was like two years ago. Barely. All we could hear about is millennials.
Right.
I think they have enough. Let's not do an hotel for millennials.
You haven't got any yurts.
Sit down and talk about
You haven't got any yurts in your hotel. No.
No.
A proper,
I mean, I particularly wanted a proper hotel.
Yeah.
Right? Not that millennials don't stay at proper hotels, but I didn't want the trendiest burger place, the craft beer place. It just, besides the fact that I didn't want it, I think it's the location in London, in Belgrade, was just absolutely wrong for it. You can't put Shoreditch in London, in Belgravia. And so I think in terms of expanding your blueprints outside the four walls of your hotel is a little bit of a complicated issue because you have to get down to the practicality of looking at your revenue and expenses. So if your revenue is static because all you're getting is actually hotel revenue, and then you're trying to expand and your expenses through labor and other costs increase, then you're actually doing probably something bad for, we're a private company, so not the share price, but for the share price of so I think you really have to think about this. As a concept, it sounds wonderful. In practicality, I think that needs to be thought about.
Speaking.
How many rooms is it again? 85. 85, yeah.
I agree entirely with Leo that Airbnb will actually increase the market. It gives people options. I mean, I stayed in an Airbnb once. I think you stay there if you're a long-term stay, if you're there with your family, or you're budget-oriented, or you're budget sensitive. What hotels have lost over the time is a bit of mystery and sexiness. Because you never know who you're going to bump into in the hotel. If you're James Bond, you bump into everybody, but us mere mortals just hope. So actually, we've been, I think, recreating what that mystery and that sexiness and that romance of hotels is important going forward.
That's cool. Yeah.
And I think there'll always be a space for that.
I think so.
I absolutely believe that.
So
I'm not sure I necessarily agree on the budget piece with Airbnb though, because I actually think the more interesting stuff on Airbnb. I mean, there is clearly a budget market, but actually, especially as Airbnb gets more regulated, if you look in the sort of mid-range boutique space. The price of an Airbnb, like $200 to $300 US. Yeah. You can get a really beautiful place, and you get a little bit more space. But it's pretty equivalent now to a boutique hotel. It might be a smaller room, more service, a little bit more glamour in the lobby. But it's actually, I think that product in the middle to the top range in Airbnb, and also One Fine Stay and Oasis and these other places is where it's most interesting at the moment.
But you come in also, LUXE. Because you providing service to now with a guide thing that somehow.
Well, we're recommending. I mean, that's the slightly different point about the experience economy. I mean, I think that's the other thing. That's why I was very interested in the people who've used the Airbnb experiences piece. But I mean, LUXE was onto that trend very early on. I mean, LUXE, I think, had a good reputation for finding the best private guides and, architectural specialists in Shanghai and all of these people that would give very, very unique, personalised sort of private tours. We've partnered with a company called Context. So Context is probably the best global. I tried that.
In Venice,
in Venice, well, they're very, very good in Europe. They cover about 30 cities as well, slightly different to our mix. Their private guides are called docents to make them sound cleverer. They're
very clever lady.
I mean, but they are effectively all PhD educated, so it's a little bit more sort of high culture to that sort of, and it's an American-based, so it's quite East Coast, sort of cultured American traveller that they're targeting. But you can now book those services on our app. And I do think, I was sort of interested to hear from these guys what sort of experiences you're also, yes, you're talking about animating the space and culture and galleries and retail, but are you also sort of tapping into that experience piece in terms of exclusive access to places around your hotel, or where does the experience piece fit in for you guys?
Well, when we were working with Marc and Chantal, we designed the spaces kind of elevating the experiences. So we built the experience around the ground floor spaces, lower ground spaces being more public, and then as you go up, move up, it becomes more exclusive.
Okay.
That's a private club. Well, not so private. That's a club. But with a roof terrace, is a club.
I think the privateness or more exclusiveness also can be derived by the price points. The area's general price point is quite low, so the layer of price actually goes up from this building. So
but I'm also talking about sort of individual experiences like a private tour or a sort of an exclusive chef's kitchen experience or whatever, because like what's interesting to me is because I was always a little bit dubious about the Airbnb experiences thing. I thought it was a sort of good idea, but I didn't quite understand how scalable it was, because it needs the physical person to deliver the experience rather than just the real estate. Yeah. But I think that's quite a high percentage just on the poll here of people who are saying, well, no, actually, I'm staying in Tokyo in a residential neighborhood. If someone can show me street art, then I'd like to do that. Or a cube, and you're in Havana and there's a music person that's taking you to clubs. And, it seemed to be that the majority of people thought that those experiences delivered. I mean, would people do it again? Would you pay? Did you think the value equation was the right? How much were you paying for that experience, roughly?
For what?
Well, for these Airbnb experiences, like a cycling person takes you around Miami's cycling lanes, or a Cuban, a Cuban singer takes you around the clubs in
I think
Havana.
It's really depending on the customer. It's something for you. It may not be something for you. I had a fortune to visit, participate in the first Airbnb Open in San Francisco for their hosts.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And they did a conference, and I could definitely see the direction they're going for is about community. They're not about budget or they have different price ranges, but they want to build their concept around being with the locals, interaction with the locals. Some people like that, but when I'm on a one-day business trip to Hong Kong, I'm not gonna search for who's the best host, and I just wanna. So there's a space for hotels. I believe there's a space for Airbnb.
Well, the thing is, there's increasing number of people traveling. China has 150 million, I think. Last year, there's Africa coming, South America, Europe, all these people. So there's 1.5 billion, I think, tourists traveling every year, and it's just going to go up and up and up. And the thing is now, wherever you go, it's busy. It's getting, wherever you go, it's getting busy. I mean, Simon, you've seen the. You started with Lonely Planet, right? And you sorry.
No.
I mean, we can talk about that. How that ramped up, and what's next is we're gonna have to create new destinations.
Well, we would talk about ubiquity at Lonely Planet. We were constantly, it's I joined 30 years in, but there's nothing more depressing than going to a cafe in Hanoi and seeing 5 people with Lonely Planet guides on the table. At least with LUXE guides, they're discreetly placed in your pocket, so you're not displaying.
I put a picture of Burning Man here.
Oh yeah.
And the island, because that becomes for me
it's commoditized now.
It's commoditized.
Destination.
Yeah. It's commoditized.
It is. Yeah. No, there's no intimacy in that experience.
80,000 people.
No.
Yeah. But that's going to be an issue in a sense.
Yes, and there is constant reinvention around pop-ups and more exclusive experiences and all of that kind of stuff. But I think the point I was trying to make was less about the Airbnb versus hotel point than about the economy around the delivery of experiences in destination is growing exponentially. That is Airbnb has tapped into it, but so has Context Tours. But in terms of, say for instance, in mergers and acquisitions, and I watch this quite carefully in terms of my own business, in travel there are 3 great verticals. There's the flights, and that's completely commoditized. It's all driven by meta search. No one's adding any value. It's just about inventory. Hotels, yes, there's a curatorial element to it from a sort of OTA perspective, but not really. It's much more commoditized. Where the next sort of big consolidation will come is around activities and and getting access to unique experiences, getting access to the best private guides.
That's via island in Japan, where with the museum.
Naoshima, is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's 2 completely opposite example, but basically destinations that are built up. Out of nowhere, in a sense.
Yeah.
Haven't hotels always done that? You want a booking at a great restaurant, you call the concierge and say, listen, it's my wife's, it's my mother-in-law's birthday, please send her there because I want to go somewhere else. But it's my wife's birthday, I really want to go there, I'm sorry to make a reservation. It's to create those experiences, or a private shopper at where, I'm talking about city hotels at the moment.
I think good hotels have
always done that.
Good hotels have always done it. I think the profusion of the offer has proliferated, so there's more of those kind of
people expect that kind of service now from a much wider range of it. That was the best hotels, the Palace, We used to do that, I think.
And I think
we did bicycles. We did bicycles at the Harry, and it was precisely they're actually really nice looking bicycles. But it's so people do get a little bit more experience, and they go to Hyde Park or just cycling around from shop to shop, whatever they do. So in bits and pieces, I think.
I think it's
I think we get open to questions because we're getting a bit late. So maybe any questions for our panel? Timothy. Do you have question, perspective? Timothy is coming from the digital world, and now with Rosewood.
Hi everyone. Yeah, so I come from the tech world, and I joined the hospitality 3 months ago, so I'm very new to this. Thanks for all the sharing, it's very interesting. One question, so I'm head of digital for Rosewood. A quick question to, it's very interesting to talk about the future and things like that, but when you think about the actual usage of mobile and like how you actually, we want to give experiences to people, but at the same time, the hardware is changing also in the hotels. Like, do you think we have to just, keep pushing and really, spending the money on the hardware so that we can catch up with the devices of our guests, or we just have to kind of deal with it and know that our guests might have a better mobile experience in their home than in our hotel? Like, what's your view on that?
I'm a believer of simplifying things as much as possible. Whether it could be technology in the room or mobile, as building it as simple as possible. That's my goal, because the technologies change. I used to collect CDs and DVDs, but I don't know what to do with them now, and technologies change. So keeping it as simple as possible, I think that's
a legit question, because you go to these hotels where you have the iPod charger.
Correct.
Which change, thanks Apple, every year. And then it's still there, and they're not going to change it every year. And so the more you invest, and the quicker it goes. I mean, for hotels, it's a big issue. Right?
I think you have to have, again, a balance. That's precise. I was going to say precisely that. iPod dock. I had a W hotel in Sydney. I opened it in December 1999, sold it thereafter, but W is owned by Starwood Hotels, and Starwood they said, you have to have the iPod dock there. And I said, you know what, bugger off. You don't want to sign the contract, because it was inevitable that phones are going to change. I mean, even in those days, you knew phones are going to change. You go into Cathay, they have the little slot for your phone doesn't fit in there. So it depends how much of the hardware you're going to change. I think in terms of, let's say, the lock to your door should be on your phone. You should the lock should the actual physical lock should have the ability to open the door through a phone barcode, for example. So I think you have to get bits and pieces of it. I mean, your phone has to, I was in Beijing Monday and Tuesday, and I tried to buy something, and I gave my Visa card, and they said, Alipay. Right? So there's certain things you really have to do. But changing big pieces of hardware for small technological changes, I don't think we can. Because it's a big capital investment.
I have to say, I was quite fond of my Lonely Planet.
Thank you. Yes.
I wouldn't like to forget them.
No.
On holiday.
Good.
They were well filmed.
Can you still find the Lonely Planet in bookstores? No?
Well, I mean, since the that's another whole session, but the Lonely, I sold the business to the BBC, weirdly. They didn't know what to do with it. Sold it again for a third of the price to a discount tobacco billionaire from the US, literally at a third of the price. But they've actually, in that process, not made that many inroads digitally, and they've just taken up market share. So now there's very few other print guidebooks left. And they've sort of maintained a static revenue, but on increased market share. So it's a funny story.
Any more questions? Yes.
Thank you very much for sharing us your insight. It's very interesting. My question is that as we're approaching to the new era of hotels, I mean big hotels with lots of keys, like 600 key plus. Are we seeing a change now in terms of shifting to decentralizing, reducing the number of keys in terms of running businesses? Because as most people talked about personalizations and taylorism, and everyone wants to have a sense of cultural sort of identity. How do you see that in terms of moving forward? Things like big players of, let's say Hyatt, for instance, they are seeing that change, and I'd like to hear your thoughts about that.
I feel that number of keys are really depend upon location and the demand rather than the changes in the industry.
Yeah. We don't see I think yet. I mean, there's still hotel of 600 key. Coming from coming up online in Shanghai, all those big cities.
If you have
apparently a need for that, but what's
you
interesting is the diversification. It cannot just be big hotels.
But that's really driven by development.
By what? I'm sorry.
By developer to maximize the floor space.
Right.
So that's why all the hotel companies develop all these brands.
Yes.
Put it into different locations and different specifications.
Yeah.
So if you're saying 600 keys, we probably won't put in the luxury brands or typical brand. But you can say 200 keys, I still have two spectrums of smaller boutique type hotels and luxury hotels.
So that's why we see this Stefan from Hyatt. We see this diversification of brands within the portfolio of whether it's Marriott, Hyatt.
And that's why all the
because you have to answer to different needs.
Practically every single sectors of developers and guests. So that's why you're going to keep seeing more brands coming out from each. So the differentiations is.
Yeah. So, also, I guess if your target is a certain niche or targeted audience, yes, I think I would limit the number of keys. If your question is about hotel brands that target towards certain limited demographics, yes, I would limit the number of keys.
I think also everybody wants more keys. More keys just means more revenue and greater economies of scale. It is dependent on the brand, but it's also dependent on the location. If you're in a location that just does industry-wide 90% occupancy, you say, get me more rooms. If it's doing 60% occupancy, you're trying to find niches. And it's also dependent on the capital, the richness, the capital adequacy of the developer. If land in Hong Kong is massively expensive, very few players in the market now can build 600 rooms, or they're going to find land enough to build 600 rooms within most of the spaces where hotels are prevalent.
So Harry, Hong Kong, we're looking at
210.
210, right?
Yes.
So, and in London, it's only.
It's very small. It's 85.
Yeah.
It's 85. But I wouldn't go and say I only want an 85-bedroom hotel because it's going to be niche.
Really depends.
A question for Leo. You were asked to develop your own hotel within a collection called Photograph. So, what's the gain of being with Photograph when you do a lot of the work?
Well, in the process of prior to
the process is is a good
one.
Yeah,
so prior to the idea of developing our own brand, we ran a RFP process actually. All the friends at Hyatt and Marriott, and then
don't fight.
Start with all the brands. We received the offers, but when we saw the brands that was proposed, we didn't feel
You didn't want it to be a Hyatt or a Marriott. I think the Autograph collection appealed to you because you could create your own.
I wanted
brand,
some more.
Like many owners have this.
Customized to the location. But then back then it was only luxury. The collections were back then only luxury collections and Autograph collection, and Autograph collection had a seemingly more wider range of products than luxury collection. The name itself insists that it's luxury, right? And that's how I started. And there were twofold strategy why I wanted to take advantage of the connection with the big brand. It's the availability to access to their distribution channel and the brand loyalty. And the flip side, the pool of talents that goes around local hotels in Korea just yet is very different from global hotel talent pool. So it's a franchise model, so we operate ourselves, but we wanted to access that talent pool that has more global, that are experienced in global standard and working in English.
So you get more pool with a brand like Marriott, even in terms of recruitment.
Because for the employees, their wish is in their career as they advance, they want to start as a staff and then become a manager and then director. They want to move up, but with just only one property as a local hotel, it's hard to retain good talents.
Yes. Question maybe directed to the three of you. Viewed from a very different perspective. You have a running hotel. You're opening soon a new hotel. You've been running your business for a long time. From conceptualization to execution, right? You have several hurdles that you need to rise, and there's several ways of materializing your brand identity and your brand itself, right? Through interior designers, through your music, through your standards, through your services, etc., etc. What do you think are your main challenges in expressing your brand, and how do you tackle these?
This time
you can get it very wrong, basically, because exactly. So technically, you need checks and balances. You need door stops. You need somebody to turn around to you and question you all the time and say, "Are you sure? Are you sure?" How do you substantiate your decision? A lot of the times with interior designers and the conceptualization, it is subjective. I like blue, I don't like green, or whatever it is. You can really hit the wrong mark. So I think that in terms of the interior design and conceptualization, and then operationally, you have, I think, two problems. Firstly, or three problems: getting the right staff, training the right staff, maintaining the right staff, and getting that balance right. Because you could put gold on the ceilings and gold on the floors, but if you're not, if you just don't get the operations right, personalize the service. For example, if you're a five-star hotel, you're a 3-star hotel, you don't personalize the service, obviously. If you don't get that right, somebody's going to walk out, and the smallest thing could help. We worked with Marc and Chantal quite a bit on this, and our TripAdvisor score went at one point, I think the highest we went through 1,000 odd hotels in London was 11, and we came up from 40, 50 all the way down to 11 in a year, because just we were personalizing.
Yeah. But the staff was key. I mean, the
staff was key.
We created those tools so you guys could engage your staff. I think was engage the your staff with a new brand was.
And we've had
critical.
The smallest turnover in staff since I had it is a Sheraton. The hotel is a Sheraton. So I think the conceptualization is subjective, and then the carrying out has to be spot on.
That's interesting. Saying you've got better retention under Harry than you did under Sheraton. Yeah, that makes sense.
Because people feel part of something. Yeah. It's not easy to get there.
And they're having fun.
Yeah, and they're having fun. Because you're having fun.
So if you would now have to scale out this Harry experience, which is this is the thing that the Marriotts are struggling with, right? So if you have to scale this up, you still want to protect all the success factors that you just described that led to so much success.
That's
very top of mind. How would you know, what are some things that you would definitely not do? How would you?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
How do you scale it?
How do you scale it? What would I not do? Is that what you said?
What would you do?
How would you do that?
How would you do it? So we, I'm going to hopefully open the Harry in two and a bit years here in Wanchai, and that's precisely the question that we've been asking ourselves daily. So it's taking those four concepts that we worked with Marc and Chantal in understanding layered, cultural, singular, and I've forgotten the other one.
Singular.
Elegance. Keeping that as the DNA and trying to have that permeate at every level, whether it's your concierge, whether it's your housekeeping, whether it's your general manager, in terms of the food that's delivered, in terms of the room service, etc., etc. In terms of the physical hotel, we have the same designer that we had in London. So she's going to, we're already working on it obviously, keep that same DNA, but it's not going to look like a residential house in Belgravia. It's going to look much more akin to, you know, taking Simon's point, we're not going to jangle Susie, what is she called? Susie Wong, posters everywhere. But it'll be much more Hong Kong.
It's just about sort of 5 or 6 of those things layered on top of each other. That's the thing. That's the thing that I can't get.
Because it's no surprise that it's a success when so much thinking happens for one location, and when you're so involved and go through the entire process, creating an entire brand, which American did for 1,000 hotels and then scaled it out. They just do this for one hotel, so I think that's very valuable. And then another thing I wanted to I'm not so sure if it's really a question, but I see there's quite a big contrast between, on a very different, so in the beginning you talked about locality. So locality, there's hotels, connect the community, the places where they are, you put them in maybe some more secondary or residential locations. Still there's a lot of growth in luxury hotel market. I think you're talking in luxury hotel market, and they do not necessarily relate so well to local community, because it's really those that are so distant, because they're on a local level. If that would be a restaurant, it would be like a destination restaurant. A luxury restaurant is not necessarily a neighborhood restaurant, actually, on the contrary. But our hotels are very luxurious because international travelers are demanding this. Is a good market segment. It's very valuable to do. But then you want this local experience, which kind of demands you not to be luxurious. You want something very common, so people can hang around it all the time and they feel relaxed and at ease. And you don't want to basically spoil your brand. So your brand stands for something that is really expressed so much more through your public spaces and food and beverage than it is through your hotel rooms. So there's these energies that don't necessarily talk to each other, and we're also trying to figure this out ourselves.
It works in Belgravia because that's the neighborhood.
That's very singular. Yeah. That's why it's a singular event.
What you were describing with Rise as well.
I thought so.
At the lower
you're
level, you want
absolutely
to
right.
be very open and linked with the neighborhood, and then when you go up, maybe you can.
Right. So we layered that. So it's open and then in Seoul.
We don't want to give an impression that it's part of a hotel to the locals. When they go to the restaurant, they would see it as an independent restaurant rather than part of a hotel.
Yeah, and we took lessons from, because when we were involved with the Opposite House in Beijing, which is the first hotel we were really involved in the creation, and you can walk in that lobby. You don't necessarily. Some people walk through it and they don't even know it's a hotel. It's basically a transient place, and I think in Seoul we will have the same thing, because it's connecting two streets, like a small street and the main street, and people will use the hotel as just a way to come across. So, and the experience will become more elevated as you go up in the hotel.
I think the other thing to think about, though, is when you talk about community, there are other ways of defining a broader community. So I think what's also interesting is the sort of idea of peer community. So I think about hotels that do a great job, say, of positioning around film and media or the creative industry. So you think about Hamyard Hotel in London. Sure. I mean, it's not a residential area, it's Soho, it's it's got its own sort of vibe and buzz, but they've also done a brilliant job of just talking to that creative community in London and internationally. There's a screening room there. So I think you can, and when I was in Jaipur, I was saying I stayed at the Rajasthan, at the Rambagh Palace, the big destination wedding place, but then I also stayed in a very small boutique hotel that was designed expressly to create a community for the gem dealers and contemporary jewellery designers. So they had just, all those people that go to Jaipur and other places in Rajasthan to source really interesting, craft or contemporary stuff. They basically just, the guy that owned it was the guy that owned the Gem Palace, and he had his network globally, and it's only 5 rooms. Of course, it's a very different kind of model, but it's a peer community. They're not worried about the local community quite so much, but they have created a real sense of an international community, and there were fascinating conversations there every night that I was there. So I think you can think about community in a different way as well.
I read also that Ace Hotel that you were talking about, they have their fan base basically, so people want to, they like the lifestyle of Ace Hotel, and it's quite successful. And in some cities actually, the fact that Ace Hotel
moved into the
neighborhood or in the street actually changed all the retail and F&B around. So they were first, and then they had an impact on the neighborhood and the
that's true in downtown LA.
Because they bring in some people different craft in their hotels.
But I think there's a limit to the scale. Unfortunately. Right?
Yeah, the select, select serve. This seems to do this so much better, because you asked about the co-working spaces in hotels. Well, there are loads. All these backpacker hotels in Chiang Mai, for instance, they are one-to-one. These are co-working spaces. They are used like that without thinking, and everybody knows it's a hotel, but there's also no hiding it's a hotel. So it's just that when you get it wrong in the market and you try to hide it, you are a hotel, and you try to, then you're probably already lost. But then let's think about a larger community.
Okay, I think we broke a record. It's quite late. Any more? Maybe last question, and then it's time for a drink, right? Yeah. Anything? Good. Okay, we leave it here. Thank you very much. Thank you.